serius tapi santai yang diselenggarakan oleh Pusat Penelitian Kewilayahan di Lembaga Ilmu Pengetahuan Indonesia. Dan saya sendiri, nama saya Fadjar I Thufail. Kali ini saya bertindak sebagai host dan kita sudah melakukan kegiatan Area-scape ini sesuai dengan volumenya. Ini adalah yang ke-7 dan kita mengundang beberapa saya tidak menyebutnya narasumber tapi tamu dari luar terutama. Kenapa dari luar? Karena sebenarnya Area-scape ini ditujukan sebagai sebuah forum dengan dua maksud. Yang pertama adalah ini adalah kegiatan yang menjadi bagian kegiatan dari pusat penelitian kami, dan pusat penelitian kami ini sebenarnya bisa dibilang adalah pusat penelitian tentang area studies ya, jadi area studies research center. Oleh karena itu kegiatan Area-scape ini adalah salah satu kegiatan yang kita adakan untuk membicarakan metode atau konsep ataupun hasil-hasil penelitian yang terkait dengan area studies yang didefinisikan secara lebih luas. Nah, memang kita sengaja untuk mengundang teman-teman atau tamu-tamu dari luar dengan satu dasar berpikir bahwa banyak sekali teman-teman tamu-tamu dari luar ini yang sudah melakukan penelitian di Indonesia secara lama ya, dan menerbitkan beberapa buku. Nah, tapi tidak banyak orang-orang di Indonesia yang tahu tentang hasil-hasil atau penelitian atau karya-karya mereka. Jadi salah satu tujuannya juga selain sebagai kegiatan untuk diskusi tentang kajian wilayah, kami memberikan kesempatan untuk para Indonesianis atau bukan Indonesianis untuk bertemu dan sharing hasil penelitian atau sharing hasil karya tulis mereka tentang Indonesia dan membuat jaringan yang lebih luas dengan teman-teman di Indonesia. Jadi itu ada dua tujuan utama yang diadakannya Area-scape ini. Area-scape ini forum berlangsung secara rutin 2 mingguan. Jadi kita akan mengundang tamu-tamu untuk berbincang dengan topik yang cukup terbuka, jadi tidak ada topik yang khusus. Dan format dari Area-scape ini bukan presentasi, tetapi adalah perbincangan ya, jadi conversation antara host dan tamu. Format Area-scape ini ada 2 bagian. Pertama, saya akan berbincang dengan tamu, mendiskusikan atau bertukar pikiran tentang beberapa hal, terutama terkait dengan baik itu hasil penelitian ataupun terbitan terakhir dari tamu tersebut. Nah, kemudian selama kurang lebih 45 menit sampai 1 jam, dan setelah itu kita akan membuka kesempatan kepada teman-teman untuk ikut berdiskusi atau memberikan tanggapan, komentar atau apalah kepada tamu ataupun kepada saya. Jadi formatnya seperti itu dan sifatnya santai tapi dengan tema-tema yang serius. Nah, untuk malam ini saya bahagia sekali bisa kedatangan atau seorang tamu yang sudah lama sekali saya kenal, Karen Strassler. Karen ini seorang antropolog dan sekarang mengajar di City University of New York dan sudah meneliti di Indonesia cukup lama. Jadi setahu saya Karen barangkali sudah meneliti di Indonesia itu mulai sekitar tahun 90-an ya. Jadi sudah cukup punya banyak kawan dan juga cukup tahu banyak tentang Indonesia. Nah, Karen ini spesialisasi beliau ini adalah antropologis dan sangat tertarik dengan fotografi dan visual culture, dan sudah menerbitkan satu buku yang ini judulnya Refracted Vision. Ini salah satu buku yang sangat menarik menurut saya. Nanti kita akan juga bicarakan. Dan kemudian baru saja menerbitkan buku yang kedua yang berjudul Demanding Images. Dan ini sangat menarik juga buku yang kedua ini. Dan kita akan lebih banyak berbincang tentang karya atau hal-hal yang ada di dalam buku Karen yang kedua ini. Nah, jadi nanti kalau misalnya bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu, teman-teman semua ada yang ingin terlibat untuk berdiskusi, silakan saja cantumkan nama di kolom chat. Nanti saya akan berikan kesempatan, kita akan open mic pada waktu sesi diskusi nanti. Jadi saya rasa sekian dulu pengantar dari saya. Nanti kita akan tahu lebih banyak tentang Karen ketika kita berbincang dengan beliau. Baik Karen, selamat pagi ya di sana ya.
Pagi di sini.
Selamat pagi, di sini selamat malam ini. Jadi terima kasih sekali lagi sudah menerima undangan kami untuk bergabung di acara Area Escape. Dan saya tahu Mbak Karen ini cukup sibuk, jadi dengan ada meluangkan waktu untuk ngobrol-ngobrol dengan kita itu satu hal yang sangat
di masa pandemi
menyenangkan.
Tidak ada ya, tidak ada. Terima kasih banyak, dan saya juga mau mengucapkan terima kasih untuk teman-teman, bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu yang mau bergabung dan berdiskusi dengan saya, dan juga kepada Pak Fadjar yang mengajak saya dan menciptakan forum menarik ini, yang saya merasa sangat penting dan sangat perlu karena memang kita sangat kurang berkomunikasi orang peneliti luar negeri dengan yang di dalam Indonesia, dan itu memang harus dikuatkan. Dan saya juga mau mengucapkan pertama terima kasih pada teman-teman Indonesia yang sangat membantu saya dengan buku dan penelitian saya, yang teman-teman dari narasumber saya yang dengan penuh murah hati dan pengetahuan mereka membantu saya, dan jelas hasil buku itu adalah hasil dari mereka, tidak hanya saya. Dan saya merasa bahwa atau harapan saya adalah bahwa buku ini akan menjadi semacam dokumentasi atau arsip yang berguna pada teman-teman. Time frame-nya dari awal reformasi tahun 98 sampai ke pemilihan umum 2014 dengan pilihan Jokowi. Dan ya, mudah-mudahan buku ini menjadi masukan kecil kepada sejarah Indonesia. Dan dan juga terima kasih Fadjar menjadi sponsor saya waktu saya penelitian di Indonesia tahun 2013. Jadi sekali lagi terima kasih atas itu. Dan maaf kalau nanti saya pakai bahasa Inggris karena bahasa Indonesia saya cukup lama, saya tidak sempat berbahasa Indonesia, dan ya pasti nanti malu kalau terlalu, dan mungkin saya bisa mengekspresikan ide saya dengan lebih tepat kalau saya pakai bahasa Inggris. Jadi maaf dan maklum.
Saya mungkin tidak terlalu setuju dengan statement yang terakhir, karena bahasa Indonesia kan masih bagus. jadi barangkali itu harus dikoreksi itu statementnya. Oke, baik. Kalau begitu mari kita mulai saja ngobrol-ngobrol, Karen ya.
Ya.
Jadi sekali lagi terima kasih. Dan barangkali lebih baik ya. Saya tahu, saya kenal cukup lama dengan Karen. Tetapi mungkin teman-teman belum begitu tahu sebenarnya siapa Karen dan kenapa Karen tertarik dengan Indonesia ini, khususnya tentang topik yang menurut saya cukup jarang diteliti oleh para Indonesianis, yaitu budaya visual. Karena setahu saya hanya beberapa orang khususnya antropolog yang memberikan perhatian terhadap budaya visual ini. Salah satunya barangkali adalah Ken George barangkali. Terus kemudian ada kalau yang lama-lama barangkali Bateson dan lain-lainnya. Tapi bisa dibilang cukup jarang kalau kita lihat di dalam komposisi para peneliti tentang Indonesia yang tertarik budaya visual ini. Bisa tolong diceritakan bagaimana kisahnya Karen sehingga sampai ke Indonesia.
Oke, saya coba. So everyone comes to their path through, many strange circumstances that can't be fully explained, I think. But I grew up always knowing about Indonesia because I had relatives who had lived in Indonesia in the late 1960s and early 70s. And I would go to their house and they had objects from Indonesia that were, beautiful and exotic to me and interesting. And so Indonesia was this place that I imagined. And when I was in college, I had the opportunity to study abroad, and I realized that there was a program in Bali at the time run by Ruchina Ballinger. And so I did it. And so that was my first time in Indonesia. That was in 1989. And that was my first introduction. And then a number of years later, when I decided to go to graduate school, I was interested in anthropology. And I pretty quickly realized you can't study anthropology without having a site. At least at that time, you really needed like a place. And Indonesia was an obvious choice because I already knew a little bit and was very interested. And also I ended up in graduate school at the University of Michigan, which is one of the few places in the United States that has a Southeast Asia program and where you could study the Indonesian language. I studied with the wonderful Mbak Minuk and with Nancy Florida. And so I was very, very lucky to have really wonderful guides to Indonesia there who, of course, moved me far beyond that initial, interest in the exotic and into a really deep engagement with Indonesian history and society. People like Rudolf Mrazek, Nancy Florida, Ann Stoller, and later, as I was writing my dissertation, Webb Keen, who really deeply enriched my understanding of Indonesia and helped set me on a path. So as I was learning about Indonesia, I was also learning about anthropology. And one of the things that really struck me, this was in the mid-90s when I was starting my graduate study, was that anthropology had these very, very rich set of tools for understanding language and was very sophisticated in its interpretation of linguistic communication. I mean, there's a whole subfield, right, of linguistic anthropology. But when it came to visual communication, it was extremely impoverished. And anthropology in general seemed to look at images as, if they looked at them at all, mostly it was just ignored, but if they were addressed, it was sort of, as something that was a problem, that was not real culture, that was, destructive. And I just felt, being a person who had always been very interested in art and photography, I just felt like, how can you understand the world that we live in if today, right? And of course, it's only gotten so much more so since the mid-90s, if you don't have a set of tools for analyzing images. So really starting in graduate school, I started really having to educate myself because there was not a lot within anthropology at that time. There was just starting to be some work on photography. It was mostly focused on historical, looking, sort of revisiting colonial era and early anthropological images, but not looking at what the people and the societies we wanted to study, what they were doing with images, right? It was more about what had we done with images, meaning we being the white colonial anthropologists, and not what are the people we study, how do they inhabit environments that are full of images, how do they make images, how do they make sense with images. And, you know, I kind of came to that topic right as other people were starting to ask that same question. So, you know, there have been other people who have really helped me in thinking about these issues. But when I was in graduate school, I really had to educate myself and read a lot of, you know, art history and visual culture theory that was not being taught in my anthropology classes. But I was lucky that I had very supportive advisors and also advisors who were interested in issues of archives and collection and documentation. And so these were things I could kind of apply and make sense of in bring into my study of visual materials. And of course, you know, Indonesia is an incredibly rich, well, I think Indonesia is a rich place to study anything. You know, I can't think of anything that isn't interesting and complicated and, you know, very layered in Indonesia. But certainly visual imagery is all of that too. And in looking at photography, I was really interested in my first research in my first book, which is about popular photography. Well, part of what happened was my initial plan was to study personal collections or archives, popular archives of photography that people housed, you know, in their homes. Because I was interested in what kinds of alternative versions of history might be kind of lodged in those photographs that people had in their homes that might point to other understandings of the past than those that were dominant under the New Order with its very sort of strict narrative about history and its monopolization of history. And so my initial plan was to look at these archives as sort of reservoirs of alternative histories. But in between the time that I wrote my dissertation proposal, which I think was probably in late 1997, and actually getting a Fulbright grant to study in Indonesia, Reformasi happened. So I arrived in Indonesia to do my dissertation research, which my research plan was all based around the idea of an authoritarian state. And I arrived and there was no more authoritarian state. And instead there was just this incredible, you know, excitement and anxiety and stuff going on that nobody really knew what was going on. So, you know, as anthropologists, we're taught to expect the unexpected, right? And ethnography is a very flexible kind of research where your goal is actually to kind of open yourself to events as they're happening and not stick to a rigid program. So we always tell our students that if you come back doing exactly what you said you were going to do, there's a problem. You haven't been a good ethnographer, right? Right, Fadjar?
Well, you have to talk about that to most of many of LIPI researchers.
Yeah.
They should have listened to you.
Okay. I'll be happy
anyway,
to.
okay.
So anyway, so the changes in Indonesia made me think about, well, what is Indonesia, right? And what has made this a political entity that people are invested in? So really a continuation of Ben Anderson's work, but I started looking at how did photography play a role in bringing into being this imagined entity called Indonesia, and providing a way for people to begin to imagine themselves as Indonesians. And so this was the dissertation looked at the period, late colonial, starting the late colonial period up till around 1998, 2000, which is when I was doing my research. So that was that book. And then, but meanwhile, out of the corner of my eye, as I was doing the dissertation research, of course, I was also just absorbing everything that was happening in Indonesia in those first 2 years after Suharto stepped down. It was just an incredibly volatile and fascinating time. And I became really interested in how the political opening that was happening converged with a new media environment, a more open public sphere, and a wider range of platforms for people to express and communicate with each other. And I also noticed that images were playing a very important role in this moment, that photographs were being held up as sort of emblems of transparency, but also became part of the risks of openness. Too many images, the wrong kinds of images, how do we control images, were a lot of debate. So I started to notice that a lot of debates that were about images ended up being referendums about what is democracy, what kind of democracy do we want to have in Indonesia, what kind of a political community do we want to have. And so even though during that period I was focused on a different project, the sort of germs of a second project were started then during that initial field work. And then I continued to kind of track what was happening in the public sphere over the next 15 years or so. And that resulted in this more recent book.
Baik, mungkin stop dulu di situ, Karen. Nanti kita akan bicarakan lebih lanjut lagi tentang beberapa poin yang tadi sudah dikemukakan oleh Karen. Nah, tapi ada satu pertanyaan dasar yang ingin saya tanyakan sebelum kita masuk ke diskusi tentang buku Karen yang kedua itu. Tapi satu hal yang mungkin teman-teman perlu tahu secara singkat saja, Karen. Secara singkat saja, bagaimana perbedaan antara seorang culture critics ya atau art critics dengan seorang antropolog pada saat kita study atau mempelajari tentang image.
Okay.
Singkat saja barangkali, Karen.
Okay, I'll try. So I don't really believe very much in disciplinary borders, and I think art historians and cultural critics have been drawing on anthropological methods, and I've certainly drawn a great deal on the work of art historians and cultural studies critics. So, but in general, I would say that cultural criticism of images tended in the past to be more focused on reading the image, interpreting the image, and assuming that there was a stable meaning to that image, and that it emerged out of a particular context that it reflected and articulated. And an anthropological approach to images has tended to be less focused on what the image means and more on what the image does and what people do with images. So an ethnographic approach takes the image as an object and an actor in society, as a thing in the world, and it looks at what people are doing with images. So it's much more focused on practice, on action, on the materiality of images as objects, and and doesn't assume that we can know in advance what an image means unless we see the actual processes in which images are being encountered and used.
Nah, ini barangkali langsung terkait dengan satu konsep yang Karen pakai dalam bukunya sebenarnya, yaitu image event. Nah, kalau mungkin saya salah memahami ya, tetapi yang Karen ceritakan tadi tentang practice di belakang satu proses produksi image, distribusi, dan kemudian sirkulasi image. Apakah itu yang sebenarnya disebut sebagai image event menurut konsep yang Karen pakai itu?
So I'm using the term image event to, on the one hand, to describe a particular kind of political process in the public sphere. So an image event is something that happens when an image starts to circulate and starts to become a focus of attention, of debate, of criticism, of scrutiny. And my argument in the book is that these kinds of image events not only have become central to the conduct of politics, but also that it is through engaging with images that people practice their citizenship. So not only, I mean, that can range from just clicking to forward an image on, or to like an image, right? Some act as small as that, to something much bigger, like making an image or reworking an image or denouncing an image, right? These are ways that people participate in politics and make claims in the public sphere.
Bisa tolong diberi contoh, Karen, dengan beberapa image yang memperlihatkan itu.
So if we could go to the 6th image, please. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so one of the chapters in the book is about images of the 50,000 rupiah with Suharto's face on it, which remained in circulation for a couple of years after Reformasi. And I look at how that money became a symbol of the continued corruption and continued political power of Suharto into the Reformasi period, so that even though Suharto was gone, he remained in play, in circulation. He had currency. And the image of the money was something that then became very powerful for people to use as commentary. So everyone from artists to student activists, as is pictured in this newspaper clipping, started to play with this image and to use this image to make comments about corruption and money politic in the political process. Maybe we could see the next slide. So maybe some people might recall the circulation of these bills as campaign stickers that were extremely popular, that took the 50,000 rupiah bill, but put Megawati's face on it. They often had an image of Sukarno kind of as the authenticating watermark on the bill. They, I don't have a close-up, but they reimagined the iconography, the little images on the bill, the little slogans on the bill. Everything was sort of reinvented to imagine what a different kind of politics and a different kind of money, a different kind of economy, a different kind of relationship to the state, right? Because of course, money is a relationship to the state, right? And it has its authentication in the state. So if the 50,000 rupiah bill with Suharto on it had become a sign of corruption, this was an imagining of an alternative. So this is an idea of an image event in the sense that this money takes on a kind of public value and becomes a public sign that people are interacting with and manipulating to make their own political statements. So that's just one example. I could go on, but I don't want to take up time.
Itu barangkali juga kemudian terkait dengan satu konsep yang Karen pakai dalam studinya, yaitu tentang ludik.
Yes.
Jadi kalau saya bisa terjemahkan secara sederhananya dalam bahasa Indonesia, yaitu aspek yang apa ya, yang sangat permainan ya. Jadi menempatkan sebuah image sebagai sebuah objek untuk dimanipulasi, dimainkan, dijadikan sesuatu yang fun gitu. Apakah benar begitu, Karen?
Ya, terima kasih sudah menjelaskan dengan baik konsep saya. Mungkin nanti Fadjar mau menerjemahkan buku saya.
Dengan senang hati.
Tolong. Yeah. So one of the arguments in the book is that, and this touches on the idea of digital images. Of course, all images have always been manipulated and played with. Analog images too. But it's true that digital technologies have made images more accessible. More people can use them, more people can make them, and more people can play with them. And it's easier to do it. And it's easier to do it and then put those played with images out into the world and share them with others and have them take on a life of their own. So one of the arguments I'm making in the book is that for a long time, for at least 100 years, imagery in the public sphere was dominated by journalistic photographs. That was the dominant means by which political information knowledge was circulated through images. And journalistic images had the most authority to state truths about the world, right? And my argument isn't that that's no longer important or that journalistic images no longer have a role. They still do. I mean, we can see that very clearly with everything that's happening in the United States, with police brutality, that the truth of the image is still very important politically. But the journalistic photograph no longer has a monopoly. And in its place or in competition with it increasingly are what I call Ludecke images, which are, as you so nicely expressed, images that are playful, images that tell truths in a different kind of a way. They tell truths by manipulating the surface, right? And so yes, the money sticker is a great example of that. It is telling a truth, but not by trying to be transparent or realistic, right? But rather by assembling signs on the surface of the image in a way that conveys something that resonates for people. I'm wondering if I can show you a different example. Could I show another example?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
More example is better.
Okay, so maybe if we go to image 10. So one of the chapters is about scandals and about particularly about political and sex scandals that rely on a recording or an image to prove that someone has done something wrong. And I trace the rise of Roy Sorio as, coming from this authority to determine what is an authentic, truthful, transparent record of an event. And I look at how people started to play with the idea of this kind of transparent revelation of truths, partly by mocking Roy Sorio himself and his claim. So if we go down to image 13, perhaps, maybe some of you have seen this brilliant spoof TV show, Telemakita, which, makes fun of this desire to locate truths and to treat images as, authenticating events and as signs of transparency. And it sort of makes fun of the whole project of transparency. And then if we go to the next image, image 14. So maybe some of you remember the case of Gaius Tambunan, who was supposed to be in prison, but ended up watching a tennis tournament in Bali, wearing a wig and fake glasses, but of course was totally recognizable. And this exposure, right, and this was first shown through a journalistic photograph, but it also initiated a lot of play with images of Gaius showing up in all sorts of places in disguise. So you have this reimagined money, but you also have, if we go to the next slide, slide 15, there he is showing up with a bunch of school kids. If we go to the next one, we have him alongside President Obama. And if we go to the next one after that, we have Gaius wearing various kinds of ridiculous disguises. So what these playful images do is they suggest that they suggest the absurdity, right? The absurdity of the degree of corruption such that exposure doesn't really affect anything. It doesn't really change anything. The corruption just continues. And the ridiculousness of Gaius's disguise, which wasn't really much of a disguise at all, and the boldness, he was so brani, right, to go to this tennis tournament, just showed that he knew he was, he was going to be fine, right? And so these images play with that idea and make it visible through the manipulation of the image.
Wah, satu hal yang menurut saya menarik terkait dengan persoalan truth ini, ketika kampanye presiden, terutama khususnya kampanye presiden yang terakhir ini, presiden pada saat sebelum Jokowi jadi presiden, kampanye yang cukup ramai gitu. Nah, salah satu perdebatan yang selalu muncul di kedua belah pihak itu adalah tentang jumlah crowd, jumlah massa peserta kampanye. Selalu ada saling bisa dibilang saling mencoba meng-counter claim jumlah massa yang ada di kampanye. Dan saya lihat, saya baca juga dalam buku Karen juga membicarakan soal ini. Jadi tentang persoalan truth ini. Nah, pertanyaan saya adalah sebenarnya kalau kita lihat kepada studi yang pernah dilakukan misalnya James Siegel ya tentang pentingnya massa gitu. Apakah Karen melihat salah satu efek dari digital image ini adalah mencoba mereproduksikan anxiety yang pernah didiskusikan oleh Siegel dalam karyanya tentang tulisannya tentang kerusuhan Mei 98 bahwa massa itu sebenarnya membawa sebuah anxiety, political anxiety yang cukup besar, tidak hanya bagi kelompok yang terdampak oleh kerusuhan, yaitu kelompok komunitas Tionghoa, tapi juga berdampak kepada kekuatan politik sendiri. Apakah ini juga terjadi dalam bagaimana permainan image itu berlangsung pada saat kampanye presiden kemarin, Karen?
Ya, betul. Saya membahas itu dalam conclusion bab terakhir. And well, it's about the 2014 election, not the most recent, but so one of the things I'm interested in is kind of what authenticates an image, right? What makes an image appear to be convincing and persuasive to other people. And so one of the things that, as you're right, that these debates about the size, right, of the crowd, which of course it was so amazing to see, you know, that happened in Indonesia in 2014. And then in 2016 here in the US with Trump, we had the same thing, right? And so it's like, oh my God, you know, here we go. And sure enough, so many of the things about hoax and, you know, fake news have just been, you know, central to politics in the United States in the last few years as well. So this is a global phenomenon, I think. But anyway, so the anxiety that you talk about, the necessity of, you know, needing to show popular support, but needing to membedakan supporter itu dari massa yang bahaya, right? I think was a central issue for Jokowi supporters. And you can see it in the way that supporters, you know, there was a lot of emphasis on this idea of being volunteers, right? So we are not a blind mass of followers. We are volunteering. We are agents of our own political future, right? We are we are in charge of ourselves, right? Because the anxiety about a crowd, about masses, is that they're just undifferentiated and they can't think for themselves, and they're controlled by a force outside of them, right? They're controlled by PKI, or they're controlled by whoever, right? So, so you see it in the language of the volunteer. You see it in the insistence that people not show party attributes, right? There's a lot of emphasis in Jokowi rallies that people were just wearing ordinary clothes. They weren't all wearing the same t-shirts, right? As you might see at other and earlier political rallies, right? Where everyone's given the same t-shirt and wears the same color, right? So, so that was very important. And then in the visual realm, what I look at is selfies. And I look at the circulation of images that people took of themselves in the crowd. And maybe we could go to image 31. So I look in particular at these kinds of images in which people are identifying themselves as participants in a crowd, but by virtue of singling themselves out in this very individualizing, personalized idiom of the selfie, they're also insisting on their own autonomy at the same time that they're part of a crowd. And I argue that this was a way of distinguishing the crowds of supporters of Jokowi from that threatening image of the massa, right, of the crowd that, haunts as a legacy of the New Order that continues to haunt politics in Indonesia, as Jim Siegel so rightly described.
Saya ingat waktu itu, saya rasa teman-teman juga banyak yang kemudian posting foto di Facebook dan mengganti profile picture-nya di Facebook dengan dua gambar, yang satu sebelah kiri angka kandidat presiden, dan kemudian bersamaan dengan fotonya dia sendiri, dan kemudian ada tulisan I stand on the right atau something like that gitulah.
Yeah.
Jadi tapi pertanyaan saya, Karen, apakah hal-hal semacam ini hanya dimungkinkan melalui media, teknologi media yang ada? Apakah hal-hal seperti ini merupakan sesuatu yang saya mungkin terlalu simple mengatakan, tapi by default merupakan salah satu dalam konsep itu affordances yang diberikan oleh sebuah platform teknologi tertentu? Apakah hal yang seperti ini memang terjadi atau menjadi bagian yang sangat penting dalam sirkulasi images melalui platform media sosial? Bagaimana menurut Karen?
Ya, memang menurut saya kalau gambar tidak hanya, we don't encounter images just as images. We encounter images in their habitat. And the habitat of an image is a media platform, whether it's an image on the cover of a book or in a frame in a museum, right? Or on social media. Those are all platforms. So I don't particularly like making statements about the digital is this, the analog is that, because we have to ask the same question of all images. What is the medium of this image, and what are the affordances of this medium? Affordances meaning what are the material possibilities that are built into that platform, right? What is the ideology, right? The idea of a media ideology is also very important to me. What are the ideologies of that medium that affect how that image is going to work, how that image is going to be read and encountered? What are the practices and conventions associated with, let's say, Facebook, that lend a particular quality to any image that then appears within that forum? So these are the kinds of, to me, very ethnographic questions we have to ask about images, right? That is not just the image in isolation, but the image in its habitat. And one of the things that is so particular to this very complicated, densely networked public sphere that we now all live in is that images are constantly moving from one platform to another. And every time an image moves from one platform to another, it develops new, or it takes on new kinds of affordances or possibilities. And it takes on new kinds of limits and constraints. And it takes on new kinds of ideological messages about its authority, about its use, right? And new kinds of habits and expectations that viewers bring to it. So these are the kinds of things that I'm really trying to pay attention to. So I think the question about digital is there are a lot of particular affordances to the digital image, and there are particular affordances to this moment in which images are just proliferating in a way that is, far beyond anything we've ever seen before. And they're proliferating and they're mutating, they're changing, right? And so that is part of the idea of the image event that I wanted to get across, that an image is not just one thing. It's constantly evolving, it's unfolding, it's not static. And that is really very central to the kind of approach I'm taking here.
Itu menarik sekali karena jadi mengingatkan saya kepada salah satu perspektif yang banyak dikemukakan oleh teman-teman di STS Science and Technology Studies, yaitu yang disebut the multiplicity of affordances. Jadi affordances tidak hanya satu hal gitu, tetapi sesuai dengan circulation, traveling, dan kemudian discussion dan lain sebagainya, itu membuka kemungkinan ruang terhadap bentuk-bentuk affordances yang barangkali belum pernah dibayangkan ya. Dan itu orang seperti Mike Fisher barangkali mengatakannya sebagai emerging kind of things ya, jadi emerging affordances. Dan menurut saya itu menarik kalau dilihat dari studi kasus images yang dianalisis oleh Karen. Nah, terkait dengan itu ada satu mungkin yang terakhir sebelum kita buka kesempatan teman-teman untuk bertanya atau berdiskusi, yang terkait dengan emerging ini tadi, emerging affordances. Menurut saya salah satu hal yang juga menarik dilihat adalah bagaimana emerging affordances ini juga memberikan ruang terhadap emerging subjectivity, khususnya yang terkait dengan public subjectivity. Dan ini kemudian merujuk atau reverse to the last part of the title malam ini, yaitu uncertain democracy. Jadi menurut Karen, apakah salah satu contoh misalnya yang tadi disebut adalah self-governing citizen gitu ya, dengan melalui selfie dan kemudian menempatkan diri saya menjadi bagian dari media sosial, itu juga selain salah satu efek dari emerging affordances, tapi juga merupakan salah satu bukti bahwa image juga memungkinkan sebuah constitution of different kinds of publics yang mempunyai different kind of political subjectivity yang barangkali belum dibayangkan sebelum adanya pilpres misalnya. Bagaimana, Karen?
Well, I think you just said it very well. I'm not sure. I absolutely, I agree, and that's really what is most interesting to me. I mean, I think that there is a tendency to dismiss these kind of circulations of images as frivolous or as just kind of chatter, right? And the real politics is happening in the distribution of resources and and this is all just kind of obfuscation. It doesn't really matter. It's just people talking and throwing images around at each other, and it's all silly. And I'm trying to take it really seriously and to say that absolutely these are acts of imagining, acts of communicating, and they are forming subjectivities, both in the specifics of particular images as expressions and as things that people respond to and get engaged by and get interpolated by, but also in these practices right? These practices are not inconsequential. They are part of the formation of individual political subjects and collectives. So yeah, you said it as well as I could ever say it.
Baik, terima kasih Karen. Dan barangkali kita sudah sampai di akhir perbincangan, conversation. Jadi sekarang saya ingin buka kesempatan kepada teman-teman untuk ikut diskusi atau bertanya sesuatu kepada Karen, ataupun kalau saya janganlah, tanya saja kepada tamunya lah. Baik, saya akan berikan kesempatan secara bergiliran sesuai dengan pertanyaan yang muncul di kolom chat ini. Saya akan mulai dengan nanti yang pertanyaan dari Saudara Irwandi, dari mahasiswa, atau saya mungkin nggak tahu apa, dosen atau mahasiswa fotografi di ISI Yogyakarta. Ini saya rasa pertanyaan yang dosen, ya. Oke, Mas Irwandi, mungkin temannya Karen ya. Pertanyaannya singkat saja, nanti saya akan bacakan saja supaya singkat. Apa yang menjadi dasar pemilihan image-image yang menurut Karen merepresentasikan Indonesia? Silakan Karen.
You mean my selection? Do you mean my selection of images?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's a hard question to answer because some of it is intuitive and very much, inevitably reflective of my personal response and my personal access, what happened to catch my attention. So I would be very hesitant to claim that in some way I've captured the most important images of Indonesia in this moment at all. I mean, there are other events that are just as important that could have been subjected to the same kind of analysis that I offer. So I certainly don't want to suggest that, somehow I have had the knowledge or the insight to pull out the most important images. Rather, I picked images and image events that to me seemed to open up a discussion of something that I thought was important that was going on. And I based it on, my own kind of assessment of a broader historical moment and what was happening. But I think somebody could have written a very similar book, but chosen completely different images. I'd like to think that the overall analysis would have ended up with a lot of similar interpretations of the various kinds of aspirations and doubts that have accompanied the first 15 years of democratization.
Iya, ini pertanyaan yang menarik sebenarnya, dan saya pikir saya perlu kasih kesempatan untuk Pak Irwandi juga untuk karena menurut saya ini kembali kepada poin yang tadi di depan ya, apakah betul sebuah image ini mempunyai roh, ya, mempunyai ruh, jiwa, sehingga bisa dibilang ini adalah image tentang Indonesia, tentang kampanye presiden atau sesuatu yang sangat Indonesia gitu. Nah, barangkali Pak.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing also?
Yeah, sure.
And I'd love to hear from Pak Irwandi. Also, I want to get away from the language of representing Indonesia, because part of my argument is that these images are making Indonesia. They're not representing something that already exists. They are part of the ongoing formation of Indonesia.
Bagaimana Pak Irwandi? Sudah cukup jelas atau ada sesuatu yang masih?
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Karen. Wah, lama tidak jumpa. Maksud saya memang kami saya mungkin mewakili peneliti Indonesia yang mungkin masih baru ya dalam hal itu selalu penasaran dengan cara pandang. Nah, ketika Mbak Karen memilih foto-foto ini, apakah dengan cara pandang kita orang Indonesia atau dengan frame-nya Mbak Karen yang juga pernah tinggal di Amerika, begitu Mbak? Sehingga pasti saya merasa pilihan dari orang yang bukan Indonesia atau punya latar belakang tidak hanya dari Indonesia pasti ya kok ya pas, kok ya bagus, kok ya sangat kontekstual gitu.
Gitu. I would 100% agree with you that, you know, these are my selection, and they probably reflect all sorts of things about me that I'm not even aware of. And so I would invite you and others to do your own selection and counter my selection, you know, show other dimensions that I don't see. I don't pretend that this is a final word or a final image. And I hope that it's useful as inspiration. Maybe if it feels that it's missing something, that's good. Please fill in, please add. That would be great. I would love to feel that I provoked that dialogue.
Ya, kami perlu banyak belajar lah dari Karen.
Baik, Pak Irwandi, terima kasih. Selanjutnya saya persilakan Fathia dari UIN Jogja. Mungkin tolong bisa di-unmute saja lah langsung supaya bisa bertanya, karena cukup panjang ini pertanyaannya. Tapi tolong dikemukakan secara singkat saja. Silakan, Fathia. Sudah di-unmute belum ini? Atau sudah tidak ada orangnya malah? Fathia ini? Well, namanya dengan yang ada di kolom chat dengan yang di peserta kok tidak sama ya. Tapi saya akan bacakan saja, Karen ya. Pertanyaan dari Fathia ini. Jadi sebenarnya pertanyaannya sebagian besar sudah dijawab tadi ya. Misalnya kategori pilihan untuk image yang ingin kita masukkan dalam sebuah tulisan. Dan kenapa, bagaimana caranya atau contoh image yang bisa dilakukan, kritik seperti apa yang bisa dilakukan oleh seorang antropologis. Nah, saya rasa ini sudah banyak diceritakan dengan ilustrasi Karen tadi. Dan tentang interpretasi tadi, saya rasa juga terkait dengan sejauh mana image yang kita sajikan mampu menjelaskan interpretasi yang kita sampaikan dari sebuah tulisan. Nah, ini saya pikir pertanyaan sangat umum sekali yang agak sulit dijawab ya, karena semua bukunya adalah ya tentang interpretasi beberapa macam image yang dipilih tadi. Jadi saya rasa agak terlalu sulit untuk dijadikan sebuah satu interpretasi yang sifatnya sangat khusus gitu ya. Menurut saya ini, bagaimana menurut Karen?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question entirely, that first part of the question about the run, but maybe I could say something about the relationship between image and writing. The book.
Silakan.
So one of the things that I really am trying to do is reverse the standard relationship between image and text in academic anthropological books. So typically you have all of the analysis and the meaning is in the text, and the image is there to illustrate and affirm what is argued in the text. And I'm trying, probably not fully successfully, because after all, it's still a book. So it's still a very textual medium, but I am trying to treat the images as the primary material and the text is what illustrates the image, not the other way around. So the text is really like an extended caption, where I'm trying to work with the image, but the image is more than an illustration or a piece of evidence. It is the matter itself.
Ya, oke, terima kasih Karen. Nah, pertanyaan berikutnya kepada Bung Hefri Yodiansah. Ini saya rasa sebaiknya Bung Hefri sendiri yang langsung bertanya supaya lebih jelas. Silakan Bung Hefri. Ya, silakan Bung Hefri. Tapi audionya kok putus, tidak jelas ini.
Oh, ya?
Tidak kedengaran audionya.
Ya, kedengaran?
Ya, sekarang oke. Tapi wah, kembali lagi nih, Bung.
Oh, kembali lagi.
Ya.
Halo? Udah dengar?
Ya, silakan. Coba saja.
Oke, baik. Di sini saya ingin bertanya tentang
Aduh, maaf Bung Hefri, nggak kedengaran ya, putus-putus dan tidak kedengaran.
Tidak dengar?
Nggak, sorry. Mungkin lebih baik di ini saja Bung Hefri, coba diperbaiki dulu, nanti bisa kembali lagi bertanya. Soalnya saya agak tidak paham juga dengan pertanyaan yang Bung Bung tulis di kolom chat ya. Atau barangkali bisa coba ditulis dalam bahasa Indonesia, nanti bisa saya bacakan kembali supaya lebih jelas gitu, Bung Hefri. Baik, selanjutnya maaf ya Bung Hefri ya, kalau nanti sudah beres audionya silakan nanti bisa gabung lagi. Nah, selanjutnya saya akan kasih kesempatan kepada ini kawan Aryo Danusiri. Ini satu pertanyaan yang menarik dan sebenarnya saya punya pertanyaan yang sama dengan Bung Aryo ini tentang bukunya W.J.T. Mitchell yang What Do Pictures Want. Silakan Bung Aryo.
Wah, nggak dibacain aja Mas. Bentar saya.
Udah langsung aja lah.
Saya harus pasang. Sorry, saya pikir akan dibacain. Mana ya?
Udah kedengeran kok ini. Halo, Bung Aryo.
Udah ya?
Udah dari tadi udah. Silakan.
Oh iya. Hi Karen.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Nice to meet you again.
You too.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about how your second book resonates with Mitchell's book, What Do Pictures Want?
Yeah. So Aryo is referring to W.J.T. Mitchell, who is a very prominent visual theorist in the United States. And just for those of you who aren't familiar with the book, he talks about what it means to treat images as beings that have desires. So the idea of wanting is both the idea of a desire, that an image provokes certain kinds of reactions or asks certain things of people, but also the idea of an image wanting is a play on words, because to want is also to lack, to not have, right? So it's also about what images need to sort of fulfill their promise or their potentiality is that engagement with people. So that book was very influential for me as I began this project. And I was very much initially working within that frame and that of other people who were thinking about images as agents right? So also from Latour and STS and Alfred Gell and various different thinkers coming from different vantage points, but converging on this idea of the agency of things.
Right.
And that was very central to my, thinking as I began and worked on this book. But over time, I found myself frustrated, or just that there was something I wasn't getting from that language. And that was what I ended up thinking of as the eventfulness of an image, that the analogy of an image with a living being that Mitchell uses assumes that there's an image that travels through time, and it has this kind of, it has its own unfolding, but it doesn't, it remains as sort of a thing in the world separate from its surround.
Mm.
And it remains self-same through time.
Mm.
And I wanted a language that would better capture something much more dynamic about images, the
Right.
ways images are constantly proliferating and reverberating and spawning, right? And
Right.
extending in time and space. And
Right.
that was something that I felt that the language of agency didn't do for me. And it also didn't get to that political question that I really wanted to be at the forefront, which is what are the political work of images?
Right.
And that, to me, was not something that, something Mitchell is very interested in, and, he's always been a very important guide for me, but I found I needed to develop my own language to better
Right.
capture what I was trying to describe. So I would say, but certainly the idea of demanding images, right, riffs off of that idea, right, that images make demands, that images want things. So, I guess I would say I'm a descendant, right? I'm moving from taking it in and hopefully moving in a new direction that's useful.
Right. No, because I could only read the introduction of your book, because that's what is available.
Yeah.
And it immediately reminded me with Mitchell book, and I think your book is a great response to Mitchell's book, because it's also, because as you say, that what is important is how to really ground the image, how to understand the ground of the image, not only to ask a question about the organistic of the image, but how the image itself grounding to a certain platform, right? To a certain, and in your case, to a certain event. And it's because I believe it's really ethnographic, so it gives like anthropological response to Mitchell's.
Thank you. I hope so.
Tapi saya ingin follow up pertanyaan ini, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Saya ingin follow up satu hal ini.
Silakan,
Apakah dengan begitu Karen tidak percaya dengan ontology of images?
That's interesting.
Well, I don't. I think that in certain, I think there are ontologies to images, but there isn't an ontology of an image. In other words, the ontology of the image depends on what people bring to that image.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we have ontologies. We have ways of understanding what images are and what images do in the world and how they relate to other beings or things in the world. But I don't think that there is an ontology of photography. I think there are ontologies of photography that are historically situated.
Ya, menarik. Karena menurut saya ini satu pertanyaan yang juga terkait dengan STS sebenarnya, tentang ontology of technology, dan salah satunya adalah digital technology. Pertanyaan yang muncul adalah apakah kemudian kita bisa bicara tentang ontologi kepada semua produk-produk yang dihasilkan melalui digital gitu. Termasuk diantaranya adalah image. Tapi itu pertanyaan yang
No, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think you know, you get very close to a kind of technological determinism, right? So I like the idea of affordances because we can pay attention to actual material qualities that images have, but what people do with those material affordances or what they come to signify is malleable, and that doesn't mean that there won't be certain attributes that we'll find globally, let's say, in digital media, because those affordances are very powerful, right? And they do make possible things and limit certain things. But I wouldn't go from there to treating it as some kind of known, stable thing that we can know in advance what it is. I think we always need to investigate it ethnographically and historically.
Yeah. Kalau dalam orang-orang yang percaya tentang ontologi itu biasanya jawabannya gampang. Digital ontology itu hanya satu hal, binarisms, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1.
I guess the question is, why is that an interesting question? Like, okay, yeah, but what do we learn from that, right?
Nah, yeah, itu that's also my problem with that. I mean, I used to believe on that kind of ontology, but I think you put it very correctly that the affordances is more important to look at it, because this is in affordances is materiality. It's really important. So you're not the different kind of materiality can afford some different kind of possibility of emerging things. Itu yang menurut saya terlewat dibahas oleh mereka-mereka yang percaya terhadap ontologi itu tadi. But I think it's very interesting, contrast that we have to discuss this kind of images from different point of view gitu. Oke, berikutnya kesempatan berikutnya adalah Bung Rifki dari Kunci Study Forum. Jadi silakan Bung Rifki. Ini panjang sekali, jadi sebaiknya langsung saja ditanyakan, Bung Rifki.
Halo.
Ya, silakan.
Suaranya masuk ya?
Ya, masuk.
Hello, Karen. Thank you for your new books. It's kind of interesting. I just read the introduction, and my question is, the first one is, in your previous book, you state that you dedicated your books to Agus Mulyawan. I just wondering, what about the second books? Like you use FX Harsono for the cover. What is the background of that? And the second one is much more related to your perspective about an authentic record of an event and the transparent revelation of truth. As you put mediation as part of your title for the second book, I just wondering about what is image play in the journey to find the truth? Like, is it model the thing, like it's bring more fruitful discussion or discourse, or it just model the journey to find the truth? Because like in the recent event, like in the Novel Baswedan assault, the trial of Novel Baswedan assault, people in this like digital era can deny the authenticity of the image, or just asking whether it is true or not as a fact or as a proof to some event. I think those two questions that I want to ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I guess I didn't dedicate this book to anyone in particular. The first book was, Agus Mulyawan was someone who I knew and was a friend of mine, and I was there when he was killed, and it just was natural to dedicate the book to him, and I didn't have the same kind of obvious single person. You know, if I could dedicate it, I would dedicate it to all the artists and creative thinkers that that I met, and all the ones I had never met, whose work is really what animates this book. So I guess that's you know, who I would dedicate it to. And the choice of the cover, FX Harsono is someone whose work I admire greatly, and I have recently written an article about some of his historical work, and I've gotten to know him quite well, and so he's someone who's important to me personally, and who I think you know, has a lot of really important and interesting things to say to and about Indonesia. And I just felt that this image is a really great example of a demanding image that is also a reflection on the demands of media and the media environment of post-Suharto Indonesia. It's criticism of you know, this question of, well, now that we can speak, now that we have this open forum, what is it we're supposed to say, right? And this emptiness, and instead we're consuming, right? We're being made to consume media. So I felt that, and yet he's making that image, right? So he's putting it out there. So to me, this image was very resonant, both because of the person behind it and the image itself. And so I was really very grateful when I asked Pak Harsono if I could use it for the cover, and he agreed. And it's also kind of personally a segue, because I have now been writing about his work. And so it's kind of, for me, it's like, okay, I'm going there now, you know, to this new thing. The question about truth and authenticity and mediation.
Karen.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Tolong ditunda dulu jawaban yang kedua, karena ini nanti terkait dengan pertanyaan berikutnya.
Oke.
Jadi ada pertanyaan yang juga mempersoalkan soal truth dan bukti, evidence.
Yeah.
Jadi saya rasa ini dua hal yang bisa dijawab secara bersamaan nanti.
Oke.
Ya, tapi sebelum itu kita beri kesempatan dulu kepada Mbak Wija. Silakan Mbak Wija untuk bertanya.
Terima kasih. Selamat pagi, Karen.
Halo.
Pertanyaan saya begini. Saya mengerjakan dari sisi gender. Kalau dilihat dari gambarnya Karen itu, kalau selfie itu kan banyak perempuan ya. Gitu. Tapi kalau misalnya kita melihat image dari by gender gitu, ada perbedaan atau tidak?
Well, I think I think the way to answer this question, and the bigger question about truth and authenticity, is to talk a little bit about the second chapter of the book. Maybe we could go to image 9. So the second chapter of the book is about the issue of the rapes of Chinese Indonesian women during the 1998 quote unquote riots, right? Not orchestrated upheaval. And that is the only chapter in the book that does not have any images in it, except for this a detail of this piece by Yaya Sung, which is the sort of opening image of the chapter. And then the rest of the chapter is without any images. And I analyze that debate as what I call a negative image event, because I talk about how part of the problem of recognition for the victims of those rapes was that there was an implicit demand for images, not just images that would serve as evidence of the rapes, but of the exposure of the victims, that the victims, in order to be recognized publicly and have their claims be authenticated, were in fact required to stand before the public eye and expose themselves, their names and their identities. And of course, this was something that for very good reason, they were unwilling to do. And I contrast those images, the lack of those images, with the kidnapped activists who did testify publicly after they were released. And of course, they were men. And I also contrast the lack of images of the rapes with the circulation of images of male-on-male violence during the Reformasi demonstrations. And so my argument here is that at that time, that is very early in the Reformasi post-Suharto period, the photograph had taken on a kind of power as a fetish, or as a sign of transparency, and that it became the political currency of any sort of public recognition. And that the debate about the rapes and the refusal of the rape victims to come forward before the public eye really showed how gendered that dream of transparency was and what its exclusions were. And of course, it wasn't just that it was women who were victims, but that they were members of a minority, right, whose claims to belong in the nation were always subject to suspicion. And so that ethnic and gendered exclusions really, at this very early moment, showed how much the ideal of transparency, and along with it, the promise of the photograph as that which would secure transparency and provide accountability and truth and access to the truth, how fragile it was and how limited it was. So that's, I think, how I would begin to answer both of those questions. The question about mediation, I would say that, all images mediate and are mediated. And that is the work of images, is mediation. But the ideology of transparency is an ideology of immediacy, of lack of mediation. So there's a fundamental contradiction when you're asking an image to secure transparency, because there is no transparency, right? And the image is always mediating. And therefore, when any image is then subject to question, right? And so those claims of authenticity and claims of evidence are never secure.
Baik, cukup Mbak Wija ya?
Boleh satu lagi nggak?
Singkat ya.
Begini Karen, saya termasuk yang disebutkan oleh Karen. Jadi biasanya karena saya merasa saya suka teks gitu kan. Tapi ketika saya harus bikin PowerPoint, maka image itu ternyata membantu saya untuk melihat kontras, melihat problems gitu kan, melihat gaps gitu kan. Jadi saya di kepala saya tuh ada semacam perbedaan bahwa ada orang yang field, ada orang yang teks, dan kemudian ada orang yang image secara metodologi gitu. Dan sebetulnya bagaimana sih hubungan antara field, image, field, text, and image sebagai method?
I think, we all have our inclinations and our media that we feel comfortable in. I am also primarily a writer myself, right? an image maker so much as a writer about images. So I very much inhabit a textual world as well. But I think that, you know, when we are trying to understand what images are doing, we have to stop before we translate them into text. And we have to pause, and we have to be sensitive to the way that images operate on us viscerally, in non-discursive ways, right? That are affective, that provoke certain kinds of responses of outrage or horror or, you know, anger or desire, right? That are not necessarily things that we are capable of articulating into words. So for me, as someone who actually is more comfortable, or is very comfortable in the word world, it's my attempt in working with images is to resist the temptation to immediately translate them into words or surround them with words, and to try to give myself a moment to appreciate other ways that they are acting on me and on others, of course. But I don't really have an answer to your question. I think it's a very personal matter.
Iya, itu agak sulit memang kalau menurut saya. Tapi kita bisa diskusikan nantilah, Mbak Wija.
Ya, Mbak
Wija ini dari LIPI juga soalnya. Oke, berikut saya kasih, saya persilakan, sebentar, Violeta Simatupang. Ini sebenarnya juga terkait dengan pertanyaan berikutnya dari Pak Iqbal ini tentang jadi bagaimana sebenarnya, ada nggak yang image yang benar atau yang tidak benar, dan bagaimana kaitannya dengan posisi foto digital sebagai bukti. Tetapi nanti kita akan coba barangkali ada elaborasi lebih lanjut dari Mbak Violeta Simatupang, silakan. Singkat saja Mbak ya, tolong.
Oke, terima kasih. Hello Karen, good morning to you. My name is Violeta. Pak Fadjar, terima kasih kesempatannya. My concern is about the age differences. For example, your book is published this year, but I'm wondering what our future generation will think when they read the book in, for example, in 2040. As for me, I learned about the past history of the politics of Indonesia from the photos that was taken a long time ago. So I'm asking you because of the digital images from the media, from the social medias, are actually dominating the traditional media as well at the moment. So. And because no one is actually watching the television anymore, they prefer to watch the Instagram TV, you know, all those things. So I'm wondering how the seriousness of the history will affect the future generation through the images. That's what I want to know. Thank you, Karen.
I want to know that too. I don't think we know yet, but certainly I think we can speculate. Obviously what has happened is an enormous fracturing of our sense of credibility, or our ability to know what is credible and what is not. And, part of why I think Indonesia is so interesting is that the collapse of the New Order state occurred at the same time that this new media ecology that we're all starting to get used to now, and of course is continually evolving, that convergence of those two things happening in Indonesia at the same time, I think really highlights something that has happened globally, which is that, you know, whereas there used to be certain guaranteed, you know, not that they weren't questioned, not that they weren't doubted, but that, you know, there were centers of truth, right? There was the state and there was the mass media, and those often work together, right? At least under authoritarian regimes or under very ideologically consolidated regimes like in the United States in the past. And now we have all these other sources, right? And we don't have that kind of consensus, and we don't even have shared audiences, right? So we have fractured publics where everyone is consuming their own media, which is telling its own versions of what's happening. So how do we both as people living in this moment and for future historians, how do we parse out, you know, what's real, what's really happening? Of course, one answer to that is all of this is real. They're all really happening. Narratives are real. Stories are real. And yet, of course, we're not willing to say it doesn't matter what's true, right? It doesn't matter whether or not, you know, I don't know, whether it you know, any of these contested truths, right? There's something that we really, there's a lot at stake to know what actually happened. And we don't want to relinquish that. So I think this is kind of the problem of our era. You know, one thing that I bring to this is, you know, having a very deep appreciation of the history of photography. You know, the photograph has never unproblematically provided truth and has always had to have its claims supported by institutions. This is the major argument of people like John Tagg, who is a photo historian, and goes again, was a response to that idea, Fadjar, of the ontology of the photograph, right? The argument that Tagg and others like him made is there is no ontology of the photograph. There's nothing secure about the indexicality of the photograph. And in fact, what makes a photograph truth is power, right? It's a very Foucauldian argument that what makes something truthful is not the thing itself, but the institutions and discourses that support it. And so a journalistic photograph only had the power to assert and sustain a version of truth as long as the institution of journalism had that kind of authority and credibility. So I think what we're seeing now is competing forms of authority and a lack of consensus about where truth, you know, where to look for truth and how to secure truth. And so it's not that, you know, the easy statement about digital images is, oh, the truth doesn't matter anymore. I think that's completely wrong. The truth matters in some ways more than ever. It's just that what we're struggling over is how do we secure and which truths are going to prevail, right? And what are the mechanisms by which different truths are going to prevail? And that has always been the struggle. It's just intensified and become a much more sort of moving target, I think.
Yeah, I think I like the point, your raised point, and again reminds me of the some of the work in STS, that the problem is not whether the scientific truth is really true, but how how do we come to that kind of a stabilization of what we call truth? So that's really it's a matter of political struggle, contestations, subjectivity, and some other things. So I think it's kind of I see this kind of a resemblance from what you doing with the your analysis of image with some some other people doing with this analysis of the scientific and technological knowledge. I think it's somehow it's there on a par.
Yes.
Okay, but the next one saya rasa pertanyaan Pak Iqbal ini saya bacakan saja ya Pak Iqbal ya karena cukup jelas. Digital teknologi membuat foto menjadi gampang dimanipulasi sehingga kekuatan foto digital sebagai bukti menjadi berkurang atau melemah. Status foto menjadi setara dengan omongan. Apakah Mbak Karen melihat hal ini juga, yakni melemahnya foto sebagai bukti? This is interesting. Dan pertanyaan yang pasti banyak disampaikan nih, Karen, kalau kita bicara soal constructed nature of this, the so-called evidence.
Yeah.
Oke, silakan.
Well, I think what we just said bears directly on this question, right? That truth has always been easily manipulated, and what secures truth has never really been the image itself. It's always been the institutions and discourses around the image. However, I think there is a crisis going on right now, but I mean, it's hard for me right now not to think about what's happening in the United States because I'm so immersed in that moment now. And the question of truth, is both in terms of the coronavirus and in terms of police brutality and systemic racism is just very, very at the forefront of all public conversation right now. One of the interesting things about the images that have circulated, the videos that have circulated of police violence, for example, the George Floyd video, no one is questioning the truth of that image. And nobody is maybe surprisingly, nobody is saying, oh, that was manipulated. The power of those recordings to claim truth is enormous right now. And it kind of flies in the face of our assumption that digital images don't have the power of evidence anymore, because those are digital images and they are unbelievably powerful. So now I think it's significant that their images taken from personal phones, and they have a witness attached to them, and they have other witnesses, right? So, I mean, again, it's not just the image, it's everything that surrounds the image. In terms of the coronavirus right now in the United States, is less a debate about images, but it's so interesting. We're hearing a lot of statements that to me sound kind of old-fashioned almost. The numbers don't lie, the numbers don't lie, the numbers don't lie. Trump can deny over and over again that this is serious, but the numbers don't lie. And the images of the hospitals overflowing and the test centers overflowing don't lie, right? So I guess what I want to caution is that we don't jump to assumptions about digital media and proof and evidence. We have to really analyze what is happening in any particular instance. How are those images circulating? What are the forces that are lending certain images credibility at a particular moment and making others more easily discredited? But I think that and what are the desires, right? What are the things that animate a claim that something is true or something is false, right? What are the political stakes in those kinds of claims? To me, those are the important questions. But I mean, we're on the edge of so-called deep fakes, videos that are really very effectively faked. That will become part of our political reality very soon. And so, I think that we are in an ongoing crisis of truth, right? And truth claims, and it's up to us to figure out how to secure them. If that's something that we think is important politically.
Yes, thank you Karen. Saya rasa Pak Iqbal cukup ya, cukup jelas jawaban Karen tadi. Tapi kalau misalnya ada yang ingin ditanyakan, bisa di chat lagi, nanti saya beri kesempatan untuk kalau waktunya masih ada untuk menambahkan. Tapi saya rasa pertanyaan dan jawabannya tadi sudah cukup jelas. Ya maaf, saya harus sedikit banyak agak mempercepat ini karena sudah agak malam. Berikutnya Mbak Tung, silakan Mbak Yulan dengan singkat.
Selamat pagi Karen. Karen, menurut Karen kan tadi image itu secara ideologi juga sangat powerful ya. Nah, saya tuh tertarik dengan masalah positioning of the researcher. Itu selalu menjadi masalah karena dengan kuatnya dia secara ideologi, itu terutama kita yang di Indonesia ini seringkali melihat image itu berdasarkan ideologi. Bagaimana caranya untuk keluar dari sana? Karena saya melihat kalau kita di lapangan itu ada proses dari fenomena atau empirik itu kita abstraksikan. Tetapi ketika kita berbicara dalam teks atau apa, itu sebenarnya agak sulit itu. Karena gambaran lapangan itu lebih real. Virtualnya lebih real daripada kita lihat gambar atau omongan. Nah, jadi kesulitan yang tadi mungkin penanya pertama itu Pak Irwandi ya, sebenarnya posisi kita sebagai peneliti, terutama di Indonesia itu bermain dengan image, dengan teks juga, itu seringkali sulit lepas dari ideologi. Nah, bagaimana sebenarnya untuk bisa memproseskan reflektif yang keluar dari itu? Karena saya juga mengalami ketika melakukan studi identity, itu nomor satu yang harus saya struggle itu adalah identity saya sendiri gitu. Nah, ini bagaimana mengeluarkan ini? Itu saja, makasih.
Oke, jadi pertanyaan tentang objectivity ini mungkin Karen. Silakan Karen.
So, I mean, I think I start from the idea that we can never go outside of ideology. It's not possible. And so the best we can do is try to recognize our own position and be honest about our own position. I think obviously as a American woman coming to Indonesia, for me personally, there are obvious limits to what I know or can understand, and that will limit my analysis. And I guess I've always just tried to convince myself that it was still worth it, that maybe I had something to offer, even if I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong and people get mad and say, hey, you got it all wrong, that's still worthwhile, right? I mean, this is a conversation. I would like to feel that it's a conversation and not that I am presenting myself as, the ahli who has some definitive statement to make. I am very painfully aware of my limits. and also I'm certain part of that is I'm certain there are limits I'm not aware of, right? Ideological blinders that I have that I don't even know that I have, right? That is the nature of being in ideology. So, and that often happens then, you know, over time, right? Like you write something and then 10 years later, you're like, oh my God, how did I not see this, that, and the other thing, right? I mean, so we're fallible. We are inside of ideology. And I don't think we can escape that. I think we just have to be humble about it. And open to other perspectives. And you know, I mean, to my greatest effort, you know, I try to hear, right? I mean, I think for me, what being a good anthropologist is about listening and looking and trying to be receptive, so that what I produce is really co-produced with everyone I've talked to and everyone whose images I've looked at. I mean, that I really believe that. But inevitably I made the decisions and I, you know, make the argument and it, you know, it falls on me if it's wrong, right? Or if it's inadequate. And I just have to live with that. And I think that's what we all have to live with if we want to participate in a public or a scholarly conversation. You have to live with your own inadequacy.
Kalau di LIPI itu selalu jadi pertanyaan itu, Karen. Bagaimana Anda harus objektif selalu. Jadi itu pertanyaan yang selalu muncul. You cannot be in ideology, but you have to go out of ideology and be objective. Oke. Berikutnya dari Pak Erwanudin. Ini juga pertanyaannya cukup jelas. Jadi saya akan bacakan saja, Pak, ya, supaya cepat. Apakah kendala Karen selama meneliti di Indonesia dan apa manfaatnya bagi Anda, katanya. Bagaimana nih, Karen?
So what the question is, what is the value of my research to me?
Yeah, to you. Yes.
It's hard to just distill that down to one thing. I have spent many years being interested in Indonesia, and I hope to, you know, I think, you know, it's become a part of my life, a part of who I am. And, you know, so I hope that in writing about things that people often don't pay attention to, for example, my first book, which was about popular photography, the whole time I was doing my research, people kept saying to me, you know, why are you writing about photography in Indonesia? Like, you know, your country is so much more maju than ours, and you know, in terms of photography, and why aren't you looking at, you know, batik and gamelan, or, you know, why are you looking at photography here? And then with this book, you know, I think I selected some things that maybe seem like not so important, right? When you think about all of the challenges and struggles going on in Indonesia, you know, why am I focusing on this one little thing? Why am I focusing on Roy Suryo, you know, or like something that seems kind of secondary or superficial, or I hope that in doing that, I can draw attention to things that go unnoticed, but that I think are worth paying attention to and worth thinking about. And I think that's a lot of the value to me of anthropology, is that we often look at things that are overlooked. And, we sometimes say we make mountains out of molehills. That's an English idiom. It means we make something big out of something really small, but I think that can be very illuminating. So I guess, I get satisfaction if I feel that I've contributed something to how we as a global community and Indonesians understand Indonesia. Indonesia is very understudied in the United States and understood, and so I feel it's very important to have people in the United States who actually know something about this country, this huge and complicated and important country that is pretty much absent from conversation in the United States. So that's part of what motivates me and what I get satisfaction from. And of course I teach, so I get to share some of this knowledge with my students, and that's very important to me. And then going back to the issue of images, I'm also really trying to understand something about the world we live in that is not just specific to Indonesia, is very much relevant to what is happening in my own country and all over the world in terms of the role of images in politics. So I guess that's how I would answer your question.
Ya, baik, terima kasih Karen. Itu pertanyaan yang memang sangat luas sekali ya. Jadi bisa panjang gitu membahas itu. Berikut saya akan coba, ini pertanyaan satu yang datang dari YouTube, Mbak Ana. Jadi pertanyaannya adalah bagaimana sebenarnya ada pandangan bahwa teknologi ini juga melanggengkan hierarki, kontrol, dan manipulasi. Nah, karena teknologi, kontrol dan kekuasaan itu selalu berada atau dekat dengan infrastruktur teknologi. Bagaimana menurut pendapat Karen ini?
So, So I think the struggle over images is very much a struggle over power, and with the electronic communications law, right, which is sort of the backdrop to the third chapter of the book, which is that along with the pornography law are the laws that were put in place kind of in reaction to the opening of the internet and the circulation of images that in a way raise the question of at what point is there too much freedom, right? And how should images be controlled and how should they be regulated? So that's a really important part of the story that I'm telling in the book. And the so-called democratization of the image, the ability of anyone to make images, to manipulate images, to circulate images, is always a double-sided phenomenon, in that it, on the one hand, of course, that can be used for powers of, for making claims that go against dominant hegemonic authority, and that open up new possibilities and challenge entrenched inequalities, right? But the other side is that you can have all kinds of manipulation and, smear campaigns and various, ways that that same possibility can be used for, let's say, authoritarian or illiberal purposes, right? And so this is the field of struggle. Right? It's not simply liberatory and it's not simply dangerous. It's both at the same time. And so this is where the struggle is located. I guess is all I would say about that. You know, if you look at something like, well, in the 5th chapter of the book, I talk about the use of street banners and social media campaigns by Kopassus in 2013, when there was a killing of for preman in Jogja, right? The use of these media to support, you know, the legitimacy of an extrajudicial killing, right? And a campaign against Eastern Indonesians and against so-called preman, right, in the city. So, you know, there's not a part of what I really want to argue is that there's not a predetermined politics to any of this. They can all be used for different purposes.
Baik, terima kasih Karen. Oke, baik. Kita harus beri kesempatan kepada berikutnya. Barangkali tinggal 2 pertanyaan. Pertanyaan berikutnya dari Mbak Arini. Arini, ayo silakan Mbak Arini. Ini panjang, jadi mungkin lebih baik sampaikan langsung saja. Silakan Mbak Arini. Mohon disingkat ya, tapi ya.
Sudah tidak ada di tempat, Pak, kayaknya, Pak.
Oh, sudah nggak ada ya?
Iya.
Sudah kabur. Oke deh, kalau sudah kabur ya sudah. Baik, kalau begitu yang terakhir, barangkali untuk kali ini saya kasih kesempatan kepada sesama fellow New Yorkers, Pak Malik Gismar. Ini sama-sama mungkin pernah ketemu kali ya di New York dulu. Silakan Pak Malik.
Terima kasih Mas Fadjar. Sayangnya saya belum pernah ketemu Mbak Karen ini di New York dulu. Tahun 89 Mbak Karen ke Indonesia, saya pas datang ke New York.
Oh, oke.
Walaupun sebetulnya saya sering ke, mungkin sekarang gedung yang ditempati Mbak Karen itu, di Midtown Campus itu.
Ya, betul.
Iya kan? Karena apa namanya, external reader dari my dissertations itu dari CUNY. Kedo namanya ya, Kedo. Saya nggak tahu, mungkin sudah nggak ada di situ. Saya di New School, Mbak Karen.
Oke.
Ada installer waktu itu di situ.
Oke.
Tapi saya bukan antropolog ya. Nah, ini pertanyaan saya. There are many things actually that you said that intrigue me, yeah. And I have many questions actually. Tapi ini harinya sudah larut ini, sudah larut. Jadi saya akan mungkin one or two questions that I think probably at least for me more important, which is has theoretical and methodological consequence. You know, one thing that you said that intrigued me most, that the picture that you use is actually not capturing what was there before. I think that's what I'm of course paraphrasing here, but actually what is in the making. Yeah, you're capturing what is in the making, and that is very interesting to me, because usually what we are trying to get is actually more of what was there before, the collective representations, the collective consciousness, and all those things. But this is what I want to do. I'm trying to push a little bit here. I think that is almost impossible, at least for me. I mean, to imagine, to think that picture is only projecting the future, but not somehow related to the past. So it must be occupying certain intersections between the future and the past. Yeah. Now, and that become a very interesting theoretical propositions. You know, because the next question then is how do you deal with these tensions between the past and the future? I have to admit, confess that I have not read your books, but I will, certainly I will, because there are many things that is very interesting to me. But I would imagine that probably the past was not much of your concern, right? The past. I don't know. I certainly it could be. I could be very, very wrong. But I'm curious. I'm intrigued. How do you solve these tensions between the past and the future here? Of course, that then trigger a thought of Peirceans or median semiotics, the past and the future, the I and the me and the you and all those things become a very rich. I mean, there are a lot of things going on in my mind when I heard you talk about that. Because I think that has a very important theoretical and methodological consequences. And how do you maneuver, through this and settle all those things? That one. The second one, I will be very brief on the second one. Somehow, as I listen to you, I keep going back to the old anthropologist Dan Sperber, the epidemiology of representation. I used to like that book a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I think it's becoming more relevant when you put images, into the field, into the picture, into the possibilities of these representations, into the possibilities of epidemiology. Just think about George Floyd, just think about George Floyd,
Yeah.
Look at that. I mean, Black Lives Matter is now around the world.
Yeah.
With that single image. I think that we'll need 1,000 books to get to that effect, to the effects now. That's just amazing. Just but I promise you, I'll read your books. I'll definitely.
Thank you. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I hope we will have some conversations sometimes. Either I'm in New York or you are in Jakarta or in Bogor. I live in Bogor actually.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's too late. But I would love to have more conversations next time. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. So should I take the time to answer though a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. So the first question, absolutely, the idea that images are world creating rather than simply representing is not in any way a turn away from the past or the history, because to understand those acts of world creation are entirely predicated on historical resonances and reference and prior meanings, right? So, I mean, I could talk about different examples in the book, but I won't bring in a new example, even just talking about the idea of the crowd that we talked about, right? You can only understand what's happening with those selfie images if you understand the history of the crowd in Indonesia, because they're countering something. They're working against something. And so if you just simply looked at them and said, oh, everyone's snapping selfies because they're all self-involved, Gen Xers or Gen whatever they are, which is the kind of superficial analysis, right? You'd miss like that there's a deep historical question there that is informing the work that those images are doing. So I absolutely, even though I think it is important to see images as not only reflecting the past or documenting what has been, but bringing a world into being, they do so, on the ground of history and by drawing in historical resonances. So part of the idea of the image event is that something like, the George Floyd image that you mentioned is a perfect example of what I mean by an image event, because it proliferated and it spiraled, and it has generated, not only has it itself circulated, but people are holding up signs and painting murals, and right, his face is everywhere, right? But the image was also, we've had lots of videos of brutality. So why this video, right? There's lots of reasons for it that we could take a lot of time unpacking, but one of them is the symbolics of the knee on the neck. It's a profound symbolic image that has a long history. So that's part of why that image has done so much, right? And there's lots of other things one could say about it, but so I'm with you 100% that the image is always historical. And that's part of its eventfulness, because those historical resonances can be latent at a certain moment and then get animated. And just the Dan Sperber, I have to go back and look at that book because I don't remember it. I mean, I know who he is, but I don't remember that particular idea. But yeah, I mean, look, the language we use of viral, right? Viral images, which has now taken on a whole, with the coronavirus, now we don't say it so lightly, but yeah, I mean, and those metaphors, right, of representations that sort of spawn and reproduce, and I think are very powerful for understanding the moment. And for me, there's a lot I take from literary theory, actually, in terms like Bakhtin is very important to me, because this idea that signs and purse, right? The signs are always growing and they grow out of old signs, right? That's the Persian idea. Or that that the languages we speak and the images we use are never fully ours, right? They're part of a repertoire that is constantly being accreted, is constantly being added to. So that's, those are very helpful ways of conceptualizing what I'm trying to get at. So thank you. I'd love to talk more.
Yes, thank you, Karen. I think it reminds me on the topic that we had a couple of weeks ago with Celia Lowe, and when she was talking about viral ethnography, and I think we can use also that kind of a metaphor to see the kind of a viral ethnography on studying image.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So I think it also kind of reminds me that one particular topic that I really love to discuss with, always love to discuss that with Malik, is that kind of a rhizome. And I mean, I have my note here, and I was going to ask you something about this kind of a proliferation and rhizomatic patterns of how these images is popping up here and there, and then take different kind of forms and everything. So it reminds me of the kind of a notion of rhizomatic kind of delusion, rhizomes processes, which I think we always have a very interesting debate with Pak Male, discussion Pak Male about this. But anyway, maybe we can talk about this later on. So okay, karena sudah cukup malam, jadi kepala saya juga sudah mulai panas. Jadi saya minta maaf, mungkin terpaksa harus kita akhiri sampai di sini. Dan saya tidak akan memberi summary karena ini diskusi, conversation, jadi ya semacam ngobrol-ngobrol, jadi nggak ada kesimpulan, nggak ada summary, tapi yang jelas kita belajar sesuatu dari penelitian atau dari karya-karya tulisan Karen, khususnya yang terkait dengan images dan digital images, sehingga nanti barangkali pada satu saat kita bisa elaborasi lagi dengan diskusi yang lain. Sekali lagi terima kasih Karen atas kesempatannya. Dan mungkin ada satu dua hal yang ingin disampaikan sebelum saya tutup, Karen, silahkan.
Saya juga mau mengucapkan terima kasih atas semua pertanyaan yang sangat menarik, dan yeah, it's just a great opportunity, Fadjar, that you've provided this forum. I really, really appreciate it, and I am grateful to be able to talk about this book with you know, the people for whom it probably matters most, which is Indonesians. And you know, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. And if anyone has further questions and wants to contact me individually, of course, I'd be delighted to talk to you further. So thank you.
Baik, terima kasih Karen. Saya juga sekali lagi terima kasih atas waktunya yang cukup panjang. Dan sebelum saya tutup, ini ada satu pengumuman sedikit dari Pusat Kewilayahan LIPI untuk Area Scape volume ke-8 akan dilaksanakan minggu depan, tanggal 15, dengan tamunya adalah Profesor Albert Gomez. Nanti topiknya tentang, saya kalau tidak salah, tentang Indian Diaspora. Nanti silakan cek pengumumannya atau tunggu pengumumannya di Instagramnya Pusat Penelitian Kewilayahan LIPI atau di Facebooknya Pusat Penelitian Kewilayahan LIPI. Saya rasa itu saja dari saya, dan sekali lagi kepada Bapak Ibu, teman-teman semua, terima kasih sudah bersedia bergabung sampai cukup malam, dan saya ucapkan selamat istirahat dan stay safe and stay healthy always. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu. Selamat malam. Baik, terima kasih Karen.
Thank you Karen.
Terima kasih.